how to start/grow a pet grooming business.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been kind of an adventure for me. I would say, the most important thing is having a truly experienced pet grooming manager on board from the beginning. Without that, you're sunk. It's not going to happen. There's a lot of soft variables in this business, I imagine that a dental business is kind of the same way, or like a doctor's business, where it's like you have appointments that are scheduled, but how quickly those appointments are going to go, or how quickly you're going to deal with the different dogs. There's so many dog breeds and so many different types of dog hair and so many different dog cuts that it's not easy to like really systematize and be like, oh, well, this dog is going to take an hour. This dog's going to take, so if you don't have somebody who's like really on top of knowing what that feels like, knowing what those appointments should be, and really just a lot of experience knowing about the different breeds and the different personalities involved, you're not going to go anywhere. Yeah. So that's an important soft skill. Luckily, my wife was that, so she had that skill. So that really helped us get started. I think the second most important piece is really, you have to understand the equipment requirements and kind of the industry at large. Dog grooming, for the most part, operates as a commission industry. But that being, there's some strange things that happen in the industry. Like there's a lot of grooming businesses that try and skirt under the laws of employment. They'll hire everybody as a 1099 and, kind of dip into their wages in really weird ways, because you really can't pay commission as a 1099. You really should be just renting. So if you're going to set it up kind of like a barber shop, you would have to rent the booths at a fixed rate, and then they should be able to make whatever their take home is for, the days that they're, but that's, like I say, there's a lot of unscrupulous business owners in the dog grooming business who kind of take advantage of their employees. So I think those are kind of like the biggest factors. The next one after that is going to have to be employee relations. Man, that's a tough thing when it comes to dog groomers. They are some of the most loving and passionate people, but generally on the business skills side, that's not something that a lot of dog groomers have. It's a highly skilled trade. You have to learn the trade over years and over experience. But when it comes to things like, hey, it's really nice if you show up to your interview on time. Things that you would think that a lot of people would know. That's not necessarily how dog groomers roll, if that makes sense. They don't have those kinds of business skills. So that was kind of a learning curve for me, because for me, I'm like, if I set up an interview with somebody, they got to be bang on. Mm-hmm. So, and you really have to manage the gossip. That's another big hiccup in that, is that when you get a lot of employees who, they're kind of working in a high stress, high skill environment, they start talking. It's kind of a small, most dog shops are not huge, small space, right? So people inevitably start talking about their personal lives, their boyfriends, their politics. And these are all things that can be a dangerous game in in any small business, I imagine, but I think in a dog grooming shop especially.
Kind of like a woman's hair salon.
I didn't want to say it like that, but yes, I would say 90% of my employees are female, and so there's just that tendency to eventually get on each other's nerves, with the different kinds of things that they talk about. I found, especially in the last 2 years, it's been interesting how much politics has been kind of a striking point. Mm-hmm. That I'm not sure if that's unique to just my employees or my small business. I would guess not. I think a lot of businesses are having to deal with this right now, where you can have 3 different employees who have 3 very different ideas of what's going on politics-wise, who have to work together. And, even though their job has absolutely nothing to do with politics, that ends up becoming a point of contention sometimes. And I think that's especially tough for some of them because they know that I'm a politician. So they're like, well, we ought to be able to talk about it. I'm like, well, yeah, talking about it's not a problem. The problem is when you get mad at each other.
Yeah.
Over things that, are not in your control, are not in your coworker's control. Why are you getting mad at your coworker for supporting a politician or vice versa when, nothing that politician does is like within their control?
Mm-hmm. That'd be frustrating.
Yeah. So that's that. So we've had some hiccups there. We've had some difficulty in that particular area, but for the most part, just making sure to manage that and keep that kind of talk down, and especially like boyfriends is another one. Where the ladies will get aggressively angry at somebody's significant, like they talk badly about their significant others to blow off steam, but then some of the ladies will get aggressively angry about that, and then they'll be like, why don't you leave him? And then you're like,
yeah,
this is so that's a challenge. Yeah, that's a challenge.
The high estrogen, so it's a high estrogen business.
I suppose it is. I don't really fit in there myself, but like I say, my wife is great at it. She does great. I, for the most part, relegate myself to handling most of the business aspects. The books, the payroll. Kind of like, and then fixing stuff. I think that's really helped us out. I would say another good factor is to have somebody who's handy with fixing stuff, because we just have a lot of stuff like dog grooming tables and dog bathing tubs and stuff that, like, if I had to call professionals to fix every time that there's a problem, we would never make any money. There's just no way. You know what I mean? Like especially the way that things cost right now. Like I put a new tub in there the other day, and if I would have called a professional plumber, it would have been like, $1,200, $1,500, took me like a couple of hours and like $50, you know what I mean, to put it in. But that's just not something, if you're having to rely on outside support for fixing every little thing, that's going to eat away at any kind of profit that you can have.
I'd imagine, especially with clogged hair.
Yeah, that's a challenge, and dogs are especially challenging in that regard. They have what's colloquially known as dog slime. The skin has like a slime layer on it that humans don't have. And so when you wash them, that slime layer kind of like goops up with the shampoo, and it just turns into like a slime mold that sits on the I had to put in some special strainers on the tubs because we got to clean them out once a day or else they get clogged up.
So how big are these tubs?
Yeah, they are the same size as human bathtubs, so usually about 50 inches long, like a small bathtub, not like a huge bathtub, but like 50 inches long by maybe 30 or 40 inches wide. The difference is that they're elevated so that, groomers aren't constantly having to like bend all the way down and stuff like that. They have a ladder or a staircase for the pups to get into, so it's kind of like a back saving utility, but yeah, they're pretty cool little mechanisms.
Yeah, so what are the most difficult dog breeds?
Oh, man. I don't know if I want to get too much into the difficult dog breeds because I love my customers, and I know that they love their pups and they don't necessarily want to call their pups difficult, right? Yeah. But I would say, there's doodles are very fashionable right now. There's a lot of doodles out there, a lot of different types of doodles. And
the Labradoodles?
Yeah, there's mini doodles and all kinds of different, we just call them doodles as a group, but like you say, Labradoodles is one, and there's just all kinds of things that are basically like a poodle mixed with something else, and they're very popular right now. And I would say that they're generally good dogs, but they're also, I think that whenever there's kind of a dog breed that's popular, they're inevitably you get some owners who purchase that breed that maybe shouldn't have purchased that breed. A lot of doodles are, kind of bigger dogs and they're kind of high energy, because people don't know this, but poodles were working dogs. They're bred to be working dogs.
Very
exactly. They're meant to be worked. They're meant to be hunted. They're meant to be out there with livestock. And the same for labs. You know what I mean? And so you mix the two of them, you have a pretty high energy pup. And I think that sometimes, some of the owners who've bought some of these may not have the time or the energy to keep up with that pup. So inevitably when they show up for their groom, they're ready. They're ready for action, so that can sometimes make a groom take a little bit longer. Because they also have, really long hair and curly hair, so that's the other important thing, is to make sure that people are coming in often, especially if your dog has any kind of curl to their hair or any kind of length, because people really don't understand how bad a mat is for a dog's health. Like matting in a dog. So dog's skin is a lot thinner than our skin because their hair kind of like makes up for that thickness. It's almost paper thin. And what ends up happening with a mat in a dog is that it can actually pull the skin up into the mat. So from the outside, you might just see kind of like a matted section of hair that looks kind of all, like melded together. But underneath that, there might be a whole bunch of pieces of skin, like tufts of skin kind of pulled up into that. And it's like it's just pinching on the dog all the time.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, some people don't get to their groomers quickly enough to get that taken care of. And, that can be very painful for your pup. Could lead to a lot of stress for them. What's really sad is that when we cut those mats out, like that skin will tend to just bruise where it's been pulled. You know what I mean? So that's, like I say, that I think can be an unhealthy situation for a dog. So, just as a reminder out there for all of our dog owners, make sure you're getting in there. If your dog is the type that needs grooming, has longer hair or has curls, make sure you're getting them into the groomer, on a monthly to bi-monthly basis, because it'll help you avoid some charges and it'll help your pup live longer. So, yeah.
Dang. I heard this. I went to this seminar and they were talking about asking kids how much does it cost a year to have a dog,
right?
And when some of them were told that it costs over $1,100 a year to own a dog, just in dog food,
yeah,
they were like, I don't want to own a dog. Some kids were like that.
Yeah.
But, I would imagine a poodle,
yeah,
would be a very high maintenance dog, especially if you're having to take them to the groomers. And how often do you have to groom a poodle?
Yeah, so poodles are like I say, they're interesting. If you're working your poodle a lot and that poodle has like space to run and things like that, they're generally speaking a very good low maintenance dog. The other thing that's nice about poodles is they don't shed. So even though they have longer hair, they don't shed out on your carpets and things like that. They're also low dander, so they're good for people who have mild allergies to pups. But on the flip side, like you said, the problem is that they do have that curly hair, which is subject to that matting, and so you really got to bring your poodle in to make sure that they're not getting matted, especially if they're outside, getting dirty, because that's what really can lead to a lot of matting is when your pup is getting dirty, because that dirt is like sand, and that's what causes the hair to kind of grip together. So for kind of like your standard poodle, I would say that if you as an owner are really good at brushing out your pup, like really good at making sure that she's brushed out every single day, she or he, then you can probably get bi-monthly or even tri-monthly if you're really, really good about it. But if you're not really that great about it, if you're really not focusing like an hour to 2 hours a day of brushing your dog out, probably best to come in every month. Maybe even twice a month, once for a bath and then for a full groom.
Dang.
Yeah.
High maintenance dogs.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I guess that's the trade-off you get for not shedding.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's a fair trade, you know, I mean, because other dog, you know, like a lot of people like German Shepherds, you know, which are a short-haired dog. So you don't have, I mean, typically a short-haired dog. There are some long-haired German Shepherds that we do grooms on, but typically it's a short-haired dog. But the trade-off is that while you don't have full grooms, you should be bringing your German Shepherd in for baths and de-sheds, because German Shepherds do shed a lot. You know, so that's kind of like the difference between those two things, if that makes sense.
So what about flea and ticks? What do you do for those?
Yeah, we do have a flea shampoo. I would say, I mean, you know, honestly, here in the Spokane area, ticks are not a huge problem. I can't think of in the last 3 years, I think we've only seen maybe 2 or 3 ticks on any of the dogs that we've seen, which is incredible, because we're doing probably, you know, on average, probably 2,000 to 2,500 dogs a year, if not more. So don't see that too often. Fleas, though, and dog lice, we do see a bit.
Lice.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah, dog lice. Fleas are much worse. Dog lice, between fleas and dog lice is better. Well, for the groomer, they're both pretty bad. You don't want dog lice, because the problem with dog lice is that it'll get into other dogs, and so you don't want that. But dog lice is specific to dogs, so it can't cross over to humans, or it doesn't. I don't know if it can, but I mean, it's not a big concern. Whereas fleas will come over to people, you know. And the other problem with fleas is they jump.
Yeah.
The lice don't really jump; they just kind of crawl all over the dog under the hair. You know, so we have seen those from time to time. We have a special shampoo for fleas. With lice, that's a vet treatment, because you have to, with lice, generally speaking, there is a shampoo, but it doesn't work that well. It's a shot. So we usually send home dogs with dog lice if we see them.
Dang. So
Yeah.
I guess that's part of it. If you're shaving, you're going to possibly see egg sacs and stuff.
Yep. Yep.
And you guys would be trained to spot it.
Yeah, well,
I never know that was a thing.
Yeah, it's hey, I'm right there with you. I'm not a groomer, so I can't say, but my groomers tell me about these things. It's like, okay, great.
So how many other dog grooming businesses are in Spokane Valley?
In the valley, I think there's there's at least 6 that are like fully registered. But I do think that there's a lot of mobile businesses that I don't know, some of them are operating out of the valley. Some of them are operating out of places, that they operate small vans and things like that. And I'm sure that there's a number of really small ones that, operate out of people's houses where they just do a few dogs, here and there. So there's a few, but I would say that, the percentage of dog owners is pretty high. Out here in the valley, there's a lot of people with yards, a lot of people with kids. We're kind of a neighborhood-friendly city, so I think it's a good place to be grooming.
How many people do we got in Spokane Valley? It's like 100.
Yeah,
150,000.
A little less than that. If you believe, that it's hard to say what the exact number is, right? Like the census, I think, came out and said that we were at 104, but then I think that they revised that to be 109. I think from talking to our police chief and some of the other people, they think that number is probably closer to 115, because a lot of people move in here and, not everybody fills out the census and not everybody changes their residency to Washington like they should. So, it's a pretty big city. It's the largest Republican city in Washington State, that's for sure, by a little bit. So, yeah.
Yeah, so in a city with around 100,000.
Yeah.
with 6 businesses, you're still able to pull around 2,500 dogs a year.
Yeah, and right now I'm mostly limited by staff. You know, I'm trying to get more staff in there. It's like I say, it's a tough time. You know, I think a lot of other small businesses are seeing this too, where there's not a lot of younger people who really want to put in the work ethic to pick up a skilled job, and then some of the older people kind of like, you know, they don't really want to do it either because they're, you know, a little older, and it's a skilled job, and it's also a physical job. I mean, you know, some of the dogs that we groom are over 150 pounds, you know, and even if you're not having to pick that dog up, because we have tables that kind of go all the way down to the floor, you still have to like handle that dog, and it's putting a lot of weight, you know, like when it's turning and when it's moving, when you're holding up its leg to do nails and things like that. So yeah, I think that's I think there's enough business to go around for all the businesses that are here. We just need a few more people to jump into the grooming side.
Yeah, isn't that the way it is for trades?
Yeah.
Anything that's of value.
Yeah.
It's a labor shortage.
Yeah, it's tough. And, you know, our state hasn't exactly made it easier for any of the businesses, you know, when they keep cranking up minimum wage, you know, and that really affects some of these skilled trades, because it's like, you know, as a groomer, you can make a lot more than minimum wage if you're working your full 8-hour shift. I would say that most of my groomers don't quite do a full 8-hour shift a day. Again, they're on commission, so I, you know, let them kind of make their own schedules. But if they did do that full 8-hour shift, they'd be pulling in quite a bit. Of course, the problem is, you know, you're pulling in quite a bit, but it takes skills. You can't make mistakes. You can't be kind of messing around. You know what I mean? And for a lot of people now, like we've lost a few groomers who are like, I'm just going to go get a job at Amazon because I can be more brain dead and still make like $20 an hour. And that's just a little bit less, you know? So it's like some of them have come back, found out that job at Amazon wasn't as brain dead as they thought, or at least wasn't as stress-free as they thought, because I guess I understand that Amazon's pretty harsh on you have 2 minutes for your bathroom break. If you're not back here in this spot in exactly 2 minutes, you're docked, you know, like 15 minutes or whatever. I mean, you know,
yeah.
You know, so I think it's a little more laissez-faire, you know, at one of my shops. So like I said, we had one employee return from that and said that was a mistake. Mm-hmm. But still, it's, you know, it's tough out there. When a completely unskilled job, you know, and like I say, I mean, the trick is I can of course raise prices, right, which would bring in more commissions for my employees. But at some point, dog owners, I mean, you know, at some point we're squeezing blood from the stone, right? I mean, you know, they can't afford unlimited money for everything.
Yeah.
So thanks to our state for a poor choice, I think.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's just looking at the census, because I didn't start studying the census data until like a year ago. Mm-hmm. There is a lot of adults that are just not working.
Right.
The unworking adults.
Right.
That are within young unworking adults.
Right.
They just choose not to.
Yeah.
So there's the working class, and then there's the non-working class. And I wouldn't say that the non-working class is rich either.
No, yeah, yeah, but they're able to eke out an existence that I guess suffices, you know. But that's still, like you say, it puts a lot of strain on the system.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a mobile truck?
No, we're just a salon. We do have 2 locations. We've got the one on the north side on Garland, and then the other one in the valley. So
okay, so you got 2 locations.
Yeah, our valley location is actually our newest location. So when we originally purchased the business, so we purchased it from the previous owner, and it's actually the oldest dog grooming shop in Spokane. It was originally founded in 1967 by Dee, the original founder, and you know, she worked she was a pioneer in the dog grooming industry, because before 1967, dog grooming wasn't really a thing. You know what I mean? Like, people would just take their dogs out and shear them with sheep shears or whatever else, you know, and she was kind of a big pioneer here, and then of course, a female business owner in 1967, that was a big deal too. Actually, our location on the north side was originally her home that she had purchased, that she lived out of. And when, I think in the 70s or in the 80s, her and her husband moved into a different home, and then they converted their home into their second location, because originally Dees was downtown. So it's kind of interesting, like how much history there is there, for us, and we're really glad to keep the business going. She actually sadly just passed away about 2 months ago. So, that was kind of sad news for us. But like I say, we're going to keep it going. We're going to keep it in her name. And, so we've been working hard on it.
Nice. Dees Dog Grooming.
Yep.
That's cool. I didn't realize you had one it did dawn on me. You have one in the Garland. I just didn't connect the dots.
Sure.
Because we, as in myself, was on a team for the 50-hour film festival.
Oh, yeah.
That we do every year,
yeah.
which is still going on, technically. We'll have all the awards on the 24th. But our theme was to go to the Garland District.
Yeah.
You had to film specifically in the Garland.
Yep.
They targeted this one guitar store that you had to incorporate that guitar store. All of the outside filming had to be in the Garland, had to incorporate the guitar store and like restoration, like bringing something. So it's about stimulating the Garland District. So that's cool.
Yeah.
So if you ever get to know the owner of the brew works there in Garland Brew Works.
Yeah, we're a member of the district, so I do, yeah.
Yeah, well, his name's Aaron, I believe, but he'll definitely blow your business up.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that guitar shop owner really understood
what was happening.
Was gonna happen until he was getting inundated with all these teams coming up saying, sign this paperwork. Because we had to do it all legit.
Right.
And like the whole day, people are just
filming around it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in it.
Hopefully it brought him a lot of business.
Hopefully. It definitely gave him a lot of coverage.
A lot of exposure, yeah.
That's something to think about. Hopefully they do that. Yeah, so you have both of those locations. And now does each store pull around 2,500 dogs?
Yeah. I think that's certainly the goal. That's certainly the goal. Like I say, our Valley store is newer, so we've been kind of building that business since November. But that is the plan for both to be about that 2,500 dog, amount. And that's, again, like I said, that's appointments. That might be a lot less dogs because you have repeat appointments, obviously. But
so how do you go about finding employees?
Yeah, that has been certainly a challenge. When we first started up, luckily, again, my wife Stephanie, who's amazing, and I hope when she listens to this, she's the best thing that ever happened to me. But as I said, she was a former manager, and she was actually the regional trainer for dog groomers here out of one of the larger corporate shops. And so she had a lot of friends who she'd brought into the industry who she personally trained herself. So that really helped us kind of get staffed up quick. Unfortunately, we've kind of gone through those resources because, when you have two stores, we're about 11 employees now, so we're kind of running out of people that she's trained. So we've actually brought in a few people to train ourselves. That's one of the things that most of the other grooming shops don't do is train their own people. The corporate stores do, but a lot of the grooming shops don't, because training somebody it's a costly affair. Mm-hmm. It's also risky, because when we're training somebody, we're not paying them on commission. We're usually paying them a minimum wage. So that's a problem for us, because that means that if they don't have a dog, they're still getting paid, mm-hmm. And that's no fun. But then on top of that, it's risky because if they mess up on a dog, if they cut a dog, those are real risks. So we got to be careful. And it's also risky because you might do it for 2 months and they might just say, this is too much work. A lot of people who want to get into the business, they assume that dog grooming is just kind of like hanging out with dogs all day and like, just like, oh, this is fun and you get to pet them and, but it's not. It's a hard job. Every single dog is unique. You can't, imagine cutting somebody's hair without being able to talk to them at all, right? Like you can't say like, turn your head to the left, turn your head to the right. You know what I mean? Like the dog doesn't know what you're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to physically manipulate the dog without hurting the dog, without being violent to the dog, right? So you still have to be kind. You still have to be gentle, but you have to be able to and it's a special attitude too, because that's the other thing is dogs are very sensitive to people's, I don't know if I want to call it their aura or their personality or whatever, but if a person is like nervous or scared, a dog will pick up on that and kind of respond in kind, and that can be a really dangerous situation, with bites and other types of aggression. So, like I say, it's not an easy job. It's definitely a skilled trade, and it's definitely like a specialized person skilled trade. Like it's not just like anybody can learn to dog groom. It's like you have to have a certain personality, you have to have a certain work ethic, you have to be ready to get, wet, because that's the other piece is that most of my employees are basically wet the entire day. You know what I mean? Like, and come home covered in dog hair. They also get something that I never knew about, hair slivers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a serious thing, you know what I mean? Like you get hair slivers all over your hands, all over your chest, all over everywhere, you know what I mean? So like I say, it takes a dedicated person, but if you are that person, you can definitely do well, some of my groomers are doing very well on a monthly basis in terms of their income, especially since, again, there's no hard education required for this job. So,
yeah, and I would imagine that the first grooming experience with any dog would probably be the most traumatic for them. And then as the dog got used to that specific groomer. So each groomer is probably going to have to go through that experience again until the dog knows you.
That's exactly right. We try and avoid that as much as possible by having most of our groomers use like the same techniques with pups, because they'll get used to that too. They get used to the area, the techniques, but also the groomer. So I think that you're right on the money with that like the first appointment can be tough. And that's another thing that we offer that a lot of other shops don't offer is we also take in new grooms, new puppies. And we'll do groom training, right? So that'll be a set of 4 or 5 appointments, depending on how good the dog goes through. Well, we're not doing a full groom, and we actually charge less for it, but we're taking time, like doing, kind of putting it through the motions. Like sometimes we will, some of the groomers will take the clippers, and instead of running the clippers through, they run them backwards so that the dog kind of gets used to the vibration, but there's no chance of cutting. Because, again, I talked earlier about how thin dog skin is. It's incredibly easy to cut.
Yeah, I would suck.
Yeah.
I can't. I remember my dogs. I don't have any now, but just trying to I can't clip the nails.
Oh, yeah.
With the shit, man. Like,
yeah.
I feel so bad. I cut them close and there's blood everywhere.
Yeah, get that quick a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They call it quick?
Yeah, that's what it's called. Is like the quick on the inside of the nail.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Quick. Okay.
Yeah. So you want to try and miss that, but that's not an easy thing to do. I mean, I'll be honest. Even for seasoned groomers, like it's not abnormal to hit at least 1 or 2 quicks on a dog, because they can be different for every nail. The other thing that happens, and this goes back to what I was, really recommending for owners to get in with your groomer as much as possible, even if it's just for nail trims. That's a big one, because if you let your dog's nails, what happens is that quick grows with the nails. So if the nails grow really long, the quicks grow really long, and then you can't cut the nails short, right? So that's another piece is you want to make sure that you're cutting those nails short so that those quicks don't grow long.
You just taught me something.
There you go.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you want to make sure that they're short. Otherwise it's a whole process of months where we can only cut the nails just a little bit, so we're not hitting that quick. And then we cut a little more and a little more, but it's, it'll take weeks, months to get back to a point where, because some of these dogs that we've seen, they'll come in with 1.5-inch long nails because the owner just hasn't brought them in. You know what I mean? And that's a terrible situation for the pup. It's a bad situation for the owner's house, I would imagine,
Yeah.
But by then that quick has grown, half of that nail. So it's like, we want to make sure to not cut that if we can because it hurts the dog.
Dang, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Do you have Dremels?
We do. We offer dremeling. It is an additional charge. We can do just regular clips for $15, and then if we $5 more for a Dremel, which leaves a nice smooth finish.
So now I'm thinking like in a hasty manner. If I had a dog that had 1.5-inch nails, and I was like, "Hey, buddy, you're just gonna suffer," and I cut him close, and he bleeds quick, and then it stops, but I'll know that it will always be permanently short-ish, and then it'd be easier to manage because
it could be. You got to be really careful about that because the quick tapers, right? So if you just nick the end of it, there's some bleeding, but it's not terrible. But if you cut into a good chunk of it, like one of the thicker part,
yeah,
then it's like you're basically opening up a serious blood vessel. You know what I mean? Like, so that's that's a dangerous. I can't recommend that, but that might be true.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's correct. And I'm just thinking because some dogs you can see where the quick is. If they have the white translucent nails, but other dogs you can't.
That's right.
Because they're black nails.
That's right. And unfortunately, sometimes those white translucent nails where you think you can see the quick might not be the whole quick. Like I said, and that's why it is that even experienced groomers will sometimes just nick the end of that quick because you think you can see it really well, but not necessarily.
Yeah, that's a tough job. Have you had to deal with any cats?
We have, yeah. We don't have a cat groomer right this moment, but we did for a couple years. Cat grooming is extremely violent and dangerous compared to dog grooming. There's as thin as dog skin is, as I told you about, cat skin is even thinner and more delicate. And cats, it's funny how much smaller of an animal a cat is compared to a dog and how much weaker a cat is compared to a dog in terms of strength. But none of that matters, you know what I mean? Because let me tell you, a small cat will be, the most violent thing you've ever seen if they're not happy. And those little tiny claws, they might only be 1/4 of an inch long, but let me tell you, you know what I mean? They really get you,
1 year, my cat, he was a long-haired cat, but I was trying to give him a lion cut.
Oh, yeah.
With just normal hair clippers. That was a miserable experience.
Yeah.
And every time I'd have to catch him. It took a series of days of catching him.
Yeah.
To putting on leather gloves and then until he just fought so hard I had to let him go. I couldn't imagine having to deal with that with women. They're like, "Oh, give him my cat a lion cut."
Yeah, that's the thing,
It's just so easy.
Yeah, it's definitely not that's one of the things. We a cat groom is roughly double to 2.5 times the price of a dog groom, and we let people know. It's not about time because they're like, "How can that be? My cat is so much smaller than a dog." It's like, yeah, it's not about time. It's about the fact that your cat is a beast. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Dogs are just not like that very often. But cat, just about every cat, and we were talking earlier about how dogs get familiar with shops. Mm-hmm. Well, cats basically cannot get familiar with a place until they've been there for months. You know what I mean? So a cat coming into a grooming shop will absolutely be scared out of its mind. There's dog smell everywhere, So it's definitely an experience. There's a lot of protective clothing, a lot of strapping the cats up and putting little booties on its feet so that it can't, go crazy. And even then, you gotta be careful, because the other thing that cats can do, dogs can do this too, but they can stress themselves into a heart attack or into a seizure. So you have to be careful about that too. Like, you can't just push through it and say, oh, well, whatever, he's unhappy, but like they can stress themselves into a complete, seizure and heart attack.
Yeah. I would imagine being a cat groomer, you'd have to be like masochistic. At some level, you like getting scratched.
You're just ready to
bit.
Yeah, hear that awful yeah, like most people are like, oh, what are cat noises like? Meow, meow. It's not like that when they're unhappy.
Like,
let me tell you.
Demons.
Yeah, that's right. So, and cat bites are also vicious.
Yeah, they got sharp teeth. They go straight in.
They do, and they also have incredibly dangerous microbes. Like a cat bite is an automatic trip to a doctor. You have to go.
Yeah, there's a guy who got flesh-eating bacteria because of cat.
Right. Like a dog bite might hurt, you know what I mean? It'll feel like a bruise, you know what I mean? Like if it's really serious, they might cut into you. But a cat bite, it doesn't matter if it's small or anything else like that. It's an automatic trip to the doctor.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, that's really tough.
Right?
I know I would suck at it, the whole thing, because I could probably... Because I've self-groomed some dogs, but not well. I was using human hair clippers. You can't use that, so you have to use... And their skin is so thin, it'd be hard for me to not get it. But those chunks, those mats...
same thing. Same thing like a dog, you know what I mean? Like a cat's mats will pull their skin right up into that mat. That's... very dangerous condition, because like you say, you try and run some clippers through there, and all of a sudden you're just going to be spraying blood, and like I say, the other thing is that cats and dogs, they don't clot like people do when you cut their skin. It kind of like tears like paper, and it just it just doesn't, like with a human skin, you just kind of push it back together and it clots. It just doesn't work like that with dogs and cats.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
it's tough. Have you dealt with any dogs with sheetgrass?
Sheetgrass.
I don't know, that dogs that get sheetgrass stuck.
Oh, stuck in the I can't think of any that I can think of off the top of my head. But I know that my wife has dealt with that before. But she's been grooming for like 15 years. But I don't think we've had any at Dees. But that is another dangerous problem sometimes for dogs.
Yeah, funny thing, the history on sheetgrass, it's from Russia.
Oh, really?
No, they called it cheatgrass, but cheatgrass.
Yeah.
So we used to buy grain from Russia, and the cheatgrass looks like wheat, but it's not wheat.
Right.
And so it grows up hard, and it's a common weed around here.
Yeah.
And it was meant to try to destroy our economy, because they were trying to...
Sounds about right.
Yeah, trying to have us plant all this cheatgrass everywhere.
It'd screw up all of our stuff, yeah.
And it kills the dogs. So it kills a lot of dogs. One of my dad's dogs has cheatgrass, went up, like basically in her skull, and it's going to have to come out some way, somehow.
Right? Still in there?
Yeah, it's still in there. Been there for almost a year, and the vet says, well, her body will either just absorb it, or eventually it's going to push out
somewhere else, yeah.
And that's where it gets tough for little dogs.
We
had a Yorkshire Terrier. He died of sheetgrass. He was slowly dying. We didn't know it. Punctured his skin. We just kept going.
Kind of, digging up in there, right?
Yeah, and they can't communicate that. And punctured his lung, and he died.
Wow. Yeah, Yeah, I'm glad we haven't seen too many of those, but it's a thing.
Dang.
Yeah.
So how long ago did you get started in the business again?
So we bought the business in 2021.
Oh, okay. So it's fairly new.
For us, but like I say, the business has been running for a long time, yeah.
So where do you get your products?
Like the hair care products.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's there are a couple suppliers that we've used. My wife is pretty good about finding certain shampoos from different places. But I will say, that's been one of the concerns when it comes to tariffs and things like that. If those prices are going to go up a lot, so far we haven't seen it too much. There was during like 2021, at the end of 2021, there was a pretty huge price increase on a lot of shampoos and different products. But we did try and get them locally for a while, but unfortunately, local suppliers just don't even have the quantities that we need to pull to do what we're doing. So, yeah.
Dang.
Yeah, it's another that I as I told you, I'm not a dog groomer, but the other day we had a groomer call out sick, so I was there, kind of fixing some other things, and we got a little bit of a pile up, but I was like, hey, I'll wash this dog, thinking I knew I didn't know anything, but it had to get done. We were running out of time. So I went back there to wash the dog, and all the ladies who were there made fun of me because I was like, I finished. I think it's great. And they're like, you only use like a quarter of a bottle of shampoo. You got to use the whole bottle. I was like, oh. I was like, I thought I was being economical. They're like, no, we need the dog's hair to be really, really clean. It's another like really important piece. If the dog's hair isn't clean, it ruins the equipment.
Yeah. That would be part of maintenance.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's another like really expensive piece is maintenance and the equipment. You were talking earlier about how the clippers are different than human clippers, and they are. We have to have a sharpener come in, sharpens all of our clippers and scissors and all that stuff is incredibly expensive. I mean, a good pair of scissors can be $250 to more dollars, and a good set of clipper blades can be in excess of $150. So
are they Wall?
Some.
Really?
Some. That is one of the companies that we use. I think most of the clippers themselves, the machine part, most of those, I think most of my groomers use Wall for that. Mm-hmm. But the blades and other things, a lot of other companies make them.
I love Wall clippers. So
yeah.
When I was in the Marines, one of the first skills I picked up, which I'm happy I did, was how to be a barber. Just
nice.
Barbering,
just cut some hair. Yeah.
Yeah, doing barracks cuts, and it actually increased my career a little bit.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, because I was able to build rapport. Because everyone and their mother would come down, because every week Marines needed their haircut. So, but I remember the Wall clippers, so I'm kind of a snob about the clippers now.
Makes sense.
Wall clippers they're phenomenal, man. They're like the Honda motors of clippers, and I've plugged them into some ridiculous things like generators that don't send the power like it.
It's all brown out or overpowered.
And it still works. It just works for months on end, running a high power.
Yeah,
where you feel it in your hand. But yeah, Wall's a quality product. I was seeing some of these videos online of poodles that get spray painted different colors. Do you guys do that?
We do dyeing. That has been a place. It's incredible how much dyes have gone up in price for dog dyeing. That at least 1,500%. So we don't see a lot of that anymore because we let the person. I mean, it's usually about $200 on top of the groom, just for the dye for the dogs. And obviously that's on the customer if they want that. So we don't have a lot of call for it anymore, just because it's become so unaffordable. Mm-hmm. But and it takes a special groomer to do dyeing, because you're going to your hands are going to be staying that color for a little while. Your clothes might be staying that color for a little while. And it's a whole process on top of everything else that you're doing. So we only have two girls who are two ladies, I should say, who are, who do that on a regular basis. But like I say, we don't have a whole lot of call for it anymore because it's just become so expensive.
Mm-hmm. Damn.
Yeah.
I would think, why not just use food coloring and water?
Well, I mean, there are some ways to do some of that stuff, but then it only lasts for like a day or two. Yeah.
So when it comes to marketing, how do you market the business?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that right now, social media, for the most part, I did do a bit of, I've experimented with a lot of print advertisement, and I would say that so far that has fallen completely flat. I'm not going to name names here, but I put, just to see if anybody was paying attention, I put a 20% off coupon in a widely distributed local area paper, and not a single person called on it. And let me tell you, discounts on grooming, it's not a thing. Like, people don't do that very often. But I wanted to be able to see, is it worth my money to put this advertisement in this paper? And I mean, the fact that nobody called me up on a 20% off coupon, all these people called me up and booked for full price. And I'm like, well, okay, I don't know what to tell you. So, so I would say that's, print media doesn't seem to be a good way to do things right now. But, social media, definitely Google ads, that's an important piece. And then just kind of like a lot of word of mouth.
So you pay for Google ads?
I do.
What other ads do you pay for besides print and Google?
I also pay for Nextdoor ads, and we tried Facebook. I did a similar thing with Facebook, put a 20% out coupon there. Only had 3 people call on it, so it didn't seem like it was worth it. But I would definitely say that Google ads by far is probably our number one producer of actually turns over client calls. And that because if you pay for Google ads and they post your link, every time that somebody calls, they say, call from a Google subscriber clicking on your link before the person answers the phone. So that lets us know how often our Google ads are getting hit. So that's a nice feature that they have, very thoughtful of them. Yeah, so like I say, so that I know that one pays off in spades.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I take. What about your Google Business profile? How often do you update that?
I update it very regularly. I mean, there's not a ton of updates to put on the Google Business profile, if that makes sense. I mean, once it's like fairly complete, you're not constantly changing pictures of your exterior. I mean, so I wouldn't say that there's a lot, but I think that responding to reviews is a really helpful thing. Especially positive reviews, letting people know, thank you for that feedback. I think that that's something that businesses should do a lot of. So, yeah, I would say that, because right now we don't even have a website anymore. I got rid of our website.
Yeah.
We just use our Google profile as being the link to.
Yep.
And that seems to work really, really well for, generating business and getting people over to our shop.
Score. Yeah, I agree. And I did that with my dad because he quit now. He's out of the game. Well, he's just under the table now. But
right.
He had his cabinet business, and for years he was paying $200 a month.
Yeah.
To this company that would run his website, and went to nothing.
Yeah.
And then I said, stop paying it.
Right.
Just stop paying it. And I built him his Google Business profile. And that has had a much better return. Because what's interesting about the Google Business profile is when you give it updates, if you do a weekly update, it returns. It gives you leads.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
It's really cool. So, especially if you're in a trade.
You just update the activities?
Mm-hmm. It doesn't work for marketing companies. But if you have... Yeah, so every week I add an update, like, hey, I did a blog, or if you
It's a good idea.
If you just did a new dog, like, hey, check out this beautiful Labradoodle.
We do that. Yeah, I post regular pictures of some of our pups on our Google profile. So I suppose that is me updating.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do that at least 3 times a week, and you'll start to notice. It takes about 2 weeks for it to update.
Right.
And then then you start getting the calls.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it just kind of brings you up in the search. Like you say, I mean, it works really good. The reason I think it works so good is because most of my customers, as much as I would like to think that they're searching for Dees Dog Grooming, I mean, I think most of my customers search for something like dog grooming near me in Google Maps, and they just see what pops up. And that's, again, you know, they're not going to click on most of these companies' websites. They just go to their Google profile and see what it says there. You know, what are the ratings? What are the hours? What are the, you know, what times are they busy or whatever? Because all that information's on the Google profile.
Correct.
Yeah.
And from Google's perspective, they are trying to be number one for all of business, for business social media.
Yeah.
They're trying to be number one, so they're literally rewarding you. Now, another thing why the YouTube channel is imperative is because YouTube owns Google. Google owns YouTube. And when you type in something like Dog Grooming Spokane, what's usually going to populate is going to be the video answer to the question, right? And the video answer is going to be a YouTube short. So the shorts are rated higher than the...
Yeah, because they're promoting their own product. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the long form. And so by finding and answering these simple dog grooming related questions with a short video, you're becoming significantly more competitive.
Yeah, you're right. We really should be doing Google Shorts. Right now we post on TikTok, and that does generate, I think, quite a bit of feedback, and you know, people come in from that. But I think, like you said, if we're talking about Google search results, I would guess that Google is prioritizing its shorts over TikTok, so probably ought to jump on there.
Correct. Yeah, and I'm just not a fan of Google paid ads for a lot of reasons. I got a lot of research on that, but I find that just using the Google Business Profile, updating it, and creating shorts answering questions that Google gives you under the people also ask questions.
Right.
So answering those questions with a short video.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. And I'm right there with you. I have a lot of frustrations with Google Ads. It's a bit of a black box. You know what I mean? Like, they don't exactly tell you, you know, they say that they're charging you per click, but they don't exactly tell you how they calculate that, you know? And so I don't like that. There's also like it's amazing to me how bad the Google Ads app is for managing your Google Ads compared to like how good most other stuff on Google works. I'm like, you know, I feel like you spent billions of dollars making your YouTube work really well, and you spent like 10 seconds on your Google Ads app, which is got to be generating a lot of money. You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand like why it's so bad. You know, it doesn't work. It's not adapted well for mobile, which to me is like, how can Google not adapt their ads app for Android mobile? Right? Like, that just seems like, how. So I do have, I'm right there with you that there's a lot of things about Google Ads that I don't like, but like I say, I've seen it has generated some good response for us, especially when we opened up our second shop, the Valley shop. You know, that I think was a hard business. You know, our first shop already had reputation, already had, you know, thousands of reviews because it's been open for so long, you know. So we really didn't have to do a whole lot there. But with our second shop out here in the Valley, we're essentially starting from scratch. And the way that Google works to get that second shop registered, like, I can't connect it to the original profile. It has to have its own profile. So it was like it was starting from scratch. It had no reviews. Wasn't identified on search as being, you know, a location in the Valley or any of that other stuff. So I think that Google Ads really helped to put that as a search result, if that made sense. to kind of supercharge exactly what, like eventually you can become organic, where all you have to do is just kind of like, update your Google profile, make sure that some of your customers are leaving reviews and things like that. But I think that it helps when you're just starting a business,
I agree. Yeah. And I could see that. Google political ads are pure snake oil.
Oh, yeah.
Do not spend money on those. So I reverse engineered them, because Google political ads, they publish it, making it transparent, but they don't give you all the data. You're only allowed to like query 800,000 of the 1,600 or 16,000. Yeah, whatever. It's not very much. And basically, if you're not one of these big verified, vetted political things, you're not going to get in the higher tiers.
Right.
So like it doesn't matter how much money you spend, you're not going to get more views.
Right.
Unless you're in the tier so that's an interesting thing. Another thing that can always help every business is this thing called Metcalfe's Law. Mm-hmm. Okay, so your net worth is your net worth, and your network is the value of your network is equivalent to the square number of nodes in the network.
Right.
So with that being said, if you have 5 Google reviews and they're all 5 stars each, and you had each person who left a review like everybody else's review, you've now increased the ranking power 25
times.
Yeah. So that's a good way to get a boost.
I agree.
Yeah, so each one of those likes, that means that for Google, for the war on spam, that means that a real person read it, a real person put human energy to add that like. That says,
thumbing it up. Yep.
This is real, and I agree with it. So that's always something you can do. So whenever somebody leaves a comment, look, first off, if somebody leaves a 1-star, I report it as spam.
Generally speaking, it is a lot of times.
Yeah.
Either spam or, what we get, most of our 1-stars are basically extortion. I hate to say it, but there are those people out there who come in, then they get their dog groomed, and then at the end, you're like, this is the price. And they're like, well, I don't want to pay that. And you're like, what do you mean? We told you what the price was, and dog's groomed, job's done, now you pay. They say, well, if you don't lower the price, or if you don't give me half off, I'm going to leave a 1-star review. I never would have imagined that would be the case, but I have had that happen several times, or the other one is people will say like 2 weeks after a groom, they'll be like, you cut my dog. And you're like, no, we didn't cut your dog. I've got pictures of your dog after the groom, because we take pictures before and after of every single dog. And they'll be like, you cut my dog. And they'll send this like picture of a dog who clearly like burned his foot on the stove or something like that. You know what I mean? They're like, see, you did this, so you need to pay for the vet bill. And we'll be like, what? No, we didn't cut your dog. Here's the picture of your dog after. And they're like, well, if you don't pay for it, we're going to put a 1-star review on you. So that's a real thing, so, and we do have some of those 1-star reviews on there. I try and respond with as much kindness as I can to some of those people and say, I'm sorry about your experience or whatever, but we didn't cut your dog. But yeah, that's a thing. That's one of the ways that people are out there these days attacking small businesses.
Yep, they do. And I've helped people with this. I've helped some friends go from a lonely 1.7 star to a 4.2.
Right.
And I did it for him. I just went to his 1-star reviews and I just reported them as spam.
Yeah.
From my account.
Yeah.
And Google cleaned it up. And then I just wrote him a really nice review, plugged all these keywords, added a photo. And yeah, that cleaned it up. So don't be afraid to report those 1-stars as spam.
Yeah.
And you can report one as spam every 3 months per account.
Yeah.
And then one phone number creates 8 accounts.
Yeah. I think, like you said, that's a really important thing to do. It's also unfortunate that a lot of times with these reviews, they tend to get weighted on the negative ones because, like the truth is when most people receive a good service, they just say, okay, great. And they walk out. It's mostly the people who are angry about something that take the time and energy to go and review it, and they're like, oh, well, I didn't like this, we got a 3-star review the other day because she said that the dog's hair was too long, but she didn't want to tell the groomer because she didn't want to hurt her feelings. And it was like, so she gave us a 3-star review, and we're like, are we supposed to read your mind? You know what I mean? Like, all you would have had to say was, can you make the dog's hair a little shorter? And the groomer would have been like, oh, yeah, of course. We'll take care of it right now. You know what I mean? Like, that's seems like a strange thing to do, but.
Well, even a 1-star review, they're actually hooking you up.
Yeah.
By giving you a digital asset that proves that you're not spam.
Right. You're a real business.
You're a real business. Right. Yeah. So, even those 1-stars, I mean, I get it. It's best to clean those up and report them as spam, but there's still a blessing in disguise because it allows you to respond back and plug as many keywords as you want.
Exactly right.
In the response.
Got to find that silver lining, right?
Yeah. Have you done Facebook ads?
We did do, we did Facebook ads. I did the same thing where I put a 10% coupon on there and nobody called on it. So to me, it was like, well, nobody's going to call me on a coupon because we're getting probably 30 to 40 calls a day.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
You guys' business is good.
Grooming is tight. A lot of other shops are booked out like 3 or 4 months. I don't really understand how they let themselves get that way. It puzzles me because, I mean, we could get that way if I booked really weirdly. I don't know. I mean, I'm constantly trying to keep our bookings current. You know what I mean? Like if we have a cancellation, I'm trying to slot somebody in there. You know what I mean? So we're never out that
really
far.
Yeah. Well, 40 calls a day, that's a lot.
Yeah. So right now we're out about 3 weeks, I want to say, which is that's kind of a good place to be. I'd like to be about a week and a half out. That's usually what I like to see because people are much more happy to be like, you can come in a week and a half. People will be like, oh, great. When you start saying 3 weeks, people are like, oh, 3 weeks, that's a long time, And even if you make the booking, that's a long time for them to remember that they have an appointment. You know what I mean? Like, it's amazing how short-term memory can be for people, right? Like, if you make an appointment within a week, they're like, I know my dog grooming appointment's this week. If it's like out a month, they're like, by the time you get close to it, they're like, oh, did I have a dog grooming appointment? I don't remember,
Same with political candidates. There's an 18-day window that people forget. However, I heard that and I thought, I've never had a political candidate knock on my door.
Really?
Never.
Well, I don't know if you were here in 2023, but I door knocked this entire apartment complex.
Good for you. I probably wasn't at home at the time, but good for you. But if you knocked and I answered, I would remember.
I will have to say that is generally speaking what I find. I find a lot of politicians, especially here in the Spokane area, talk about door knocking, but don't do it.
Hustle.
Yeah. I did.
They don't knock. They'll just drop a flyer and leave.
That's another thing that they do. They just throw it because they don't want to interact with people, And for me, it's so much more powerful. I mean, if I go up to a door and knock and nobody answers, I'll leave a flyer because at least I didn't waste my time walking up to the door. Mm-hmm. But it's so much more powerful when somebody answers and you can talk to them and you can, and even sometimes even sometimes I'm a Republican. I'm, a strong conservative, but even sometimes I would, knock on the door of a person who was a liberal or a Democrat, and they would, have some hard questions at first. But a lot of times, especially in local races, there's a lot of common ground,
Mm-hmm.
And they'd still be like, well, well, you took the time to knock on my door and really talk to me. I'd be like, yeah, and I want to talk to you. You know, that's another thing that I think I'm pretty well known for out here in the Valley, is being somebody who actually wants to talk to people and wants to communicate with my constituency as much as possible.
True. Yeah, it's a big game. I've listened to these other people running their mouths talking about, oh, I hit up all these doors, but you didn't actually talk
Right.
to them.
You're right.
And if you think, well, door-to-door salesmen, they have just transitioned to going to networking events now.
Yeah.
Nobody knocks on doors.
Yeah, and the ones who do, like, creep people out for the most part.
Right. It's an interesting thing that changed. I remember when I was a kid, I was all about that, knocking, trying to sell magazines for some company that I didn't get nothing out of.
Right.
Like,
but it's something to do. It's fun, yeah.
Yeah. And it is fun.
Yeah.
But people are very afraid. They're afraid of getting, you know, they don't like conflict.
Yeah, that's another thing, you know, and or people will tell me, I can't believe you're knocking on all these doors. You know, aren't you afraid? I'm like, afraid of what? Aren't you afraid that somebody's going to shoot you? And I'm like, I mean, I hope that somebody won't shoot me, but you know, this is like my city. You know what I mean? Like, I know these people. You know what I mean? Like, they're not going to shoot me. I mean, you know, like, unnecessary amount of fear. I mean, you know, things have definitely gotten a lot more dangerous in Spokane Valley, but they're not going to shoot you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And dang it. Well, so you mentioned you did a flyer.
Yeah.
And you mailed that out. So I had this guy on, Jeremy. I call him Junk Mail Jeremy, but he's with the Wise Chopper.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever worked with the Wise Chopper. He says for $2,500, you can get to every mailbox in the county. Is that around what you got?
I think it was more expensive than that, and not nearly as many mailboxes. But you know, I have a hard time believing that's where is it going to be.
Yeah, well, he asked me a question. He's asked a few times, like, how do I prove that this works? And so I showed him, like, this is how I do it. Well, first off, you need to add a QR code.
Yeah.
And then you check. So on my Squarespace website, I can see the number of direct searches. That means somebody typed it in or they scanned the QR code and was there directly.
Yeah.
And a direct search is higher ranked compared to a Google referred search. So the direct search shows organic growth. And so that's the way I would measure it.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, like I say, with business, it's a lot easier to measure, right? That's why when I put out a 20% off coupon for dog grooming, which again is unheard of, and there are people out there who have dogs, and it's a required service. You know what I mean? Like, imagine. I mean, it's like a grocery store. You know what I mean? Like if you have to buy milk every week, and the grocery store puts milk on sale, like you're definitely going to go buy it when it's on sale. Like you don't just not pay attention to that, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. You know, dog grooming is kind of that same way. It's like if you have a dog and it requires grooming, you're on the lookout for stuff like that. And the fact that I had no calls, I'm like, well, that didn't work.
Yeah,
right?
I agree. Yeah.
that's you know, this is like giving away money, and it's still, that didn't work. So that to me says that it doesn't work. And like I said, the Google Ads thing, you know, it's very nice that they have that little message that plays, you know, that this person was referred by Google Ads. And then I'm like, okay, you know, and I know that at least half of the phone calls I get a day have that message on them. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that every single one of those, because there's, I would say a good amount of those people, I don't know how many, but a good amount of those people still say like, oh, I've booked with you before, I'm already your customer, which means that what they did is they went to Google because they didn't remember the phone call, and they typed in, you know, Dees Dog Grooming or Dog Grooming or whatever, and instead of clicking the search result, they clicked the ad, you know. So that's not necessarily like, I'm not getting a win for that. I mean, they were going to come to Dees anyway, but a good percentage of them are new customers. So
that's cool. I'm fascinated about that data.
Yeah.
And I'm always doing little experiments myself
Right.
I have this monthly AI group that I do.
Yeah.
And I've created flyers for that. I've disseminated the flyers far and wide. And I'm still playing that game in my head because I think maybe it'll work.
Yeah.
Because it worked really well in Afghanistan for me, but then again...
Different market.
Yeah, different. I mean, people didn't have social media. But the flyer has only yielded me one person.
Yeah, it's tough.
It is. It's tough. But
people ignore, like, for the most part, people ignore anything that comes in the mail that isn't something that they didn't expect. You know what I mean? Like, I know I do, right? If I didn't expect it, and it's not from a company that, like, I'm looking for that mail, like, for instance, my bank statement, I pretty much just throw it away. Mm-hmm. You know? And I think we did that to ourselves, right? Like so many scams and so many, you know what I mean? Like you get to a point where you're like, there's probably good stuff in there, but you know, the risk that I have to take that some of that it's not good stuff is not worth even trying for the good stuff. Mm-hmm. You know?
True. The only reason I even flipped through the Y shopper is because of Junk Mail Jeremy.
Right. Because you know him. Yeah.
Like that's it.
Yeah. That's what I would say. So like for my campaign in 2023, I didn't do a mailer for my political campaign then. And everybody said that I should. My opponents did mailer. You know, my opponent did like a huge mailer. He spent like $8,000 on this mailer. And, you know, I was worried for a little bit because, you know, a lot of political people, they look for those things. And then they're like, oh, you know, we saw that mailer. You didn't do a mailer, so you're not going to win. But I was like, okay, but you guys are looking for this stuff, you know what I mean? And you're like, by and large, the political people have already made up their mind who they're going to vote for. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like that mailer didn't change their mind or alter, you know what I mean? Like nothing about that mailer is actually making a market change, right? It's like, you're basically just informing the people who are already, and you know, to some extent that's important because, you know, getting somebody to come out and do an action, you know, and you referenced this earlier, like that 18-day window, they might be politically checked in, they might know who they're going to vote for, but if you're not on top of them to make sure that they vote when that window comes in, they might forget. Mm-hmm. It happens. But like I say, I just didn't think that it was going to be that impactful. It turned out not to be that impactful.
Yeah, and I really question how well road signs work.
Yeah.
It's like I don't think that spamming the roads and bridges is really making any effect.
Yeah, I would say that to me, what signs do is that they don't get you any votes. But what they do is they're a bar for existence. Mm. In other words, if a candidate has no signs out there, then I think people question whether they're a real candidate, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. Yeah. And I'm not going to knock all of I mean, I think you should have some road signs.
Right.
Because you got to put it into people's mind. Like
right.
Al Merkel, I heard of that name somewhere.
Yeah, see, and that's, I think that I don't think that anybody drives by a road sign and is like, oh, I'm going to vote for this guy because I saw his sign. I think that people hear about you someplace else, you know, whether it's in the newspaper, whether it's at a political event or however, from their neighbor, and then they drive by the sign and they're like, oh yeah, you know, or you knock on their door and then they drive by the sign and they're like, I remember, you know, that's I think where they help. But I think that there are some candidates who are like, I'm just going to put out road signs and it'll be great and that's going to be my whole campaign. And it's like, well, that's not going to do it for you. You know what I mean? Like they only help as a connector with the other things that you've done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel that now the advertising for the political world has shifted solely electronic. So the Facebook groups, the memes, that's one thing that's nice about the Republicans is they understand the meme war.
Yeah.
The left cannot meme.
No, they don't get it.
At all.
They don't get it.
So that and just podcasts.
I agree.
I mean, you watch what Donald Trump did. Because I watch him wholesale. Like, he's my favorite show, actually. And like, what did he do this election that was so efficient? Well, he rallied all these young millennials.
Right.
Minds are never changing, just kind of bland. And I think, man, why can't people just change up the road signs a bit? Like add a meme instead of a road sign. That would be memorable.
Yeah. That's why I went with orange.
Yeah, orange is good.
Everybody was like, oh, orange, Got a lot of people who really came out strong. Like, your signs are they're just so gaudy. They're so loud. How come you don't have like a nice red or blue like all the other politicians? I'm like,
because they blend in.
That's right. I was like, basically for what you just said, and the fact that you hate my sign means you saw my sign. Like that's really what I'm looking for here. So I'm right there with you. I think that's an important piece to this that is getting lost on a lot of people is that.
Well, Donald Trump's no fool. I mean, the orange is and there's also this thing I was looking at, like the psychology of orange cats.
Yeah.
Like yellow cats, like people tend to like them. They're very accepted.
Yeah.
Everywhere. So there's like some subtle psychology with that. But I'm pretty excited I'm always excited just to see how memes work. And
right.
When I helped out Andy Van Winkle, he was on the podcast.
Great guy.
Yeah, it didn't take much to blow his opponent out of the water because his opponent had no help, no memes.
Right.
And I wasn't dedicating too much time to help him. I would do one meme a week.
Yeah.
Post it 40 different Facebook groups and
Took
let
off.
It sit. Sometimes there was engagement, sometimes there wasn't, but it was a good one. Like, oh man, yeah. I
Humor is powerful,
nasty
right?
Memes, man. Nasty memes. Like my favorite one, because he was running against Fennessy.
Yeah,
right?
And Fennessy had a lot of things that you could meme him about.
Well, what I did was I didn't put a picture of his face, and I just put a picture of a bag of fentanyl and a bottle of Hennessy.
Yeah.
And I say no to fentanyl and Hennessy.
Fennessy.
Yeah. And that stuck.
Yeah,
that was
that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
So I'm excited. I'm always interested to see how it works.
Yeah.
And I look at the political data, like what people are spending money on. They just spend money on stupid shit.
Yeah.
That there is no proof any of it's going to work.
I'll tell you what, one thing that I did a lot of before 2023, and, I didn't actually take my own medicine on this one, but I did a regression analysis on PDC spends in local races here in Spokane County and found that the only correlation between spending on something and winning was on radio. It was the only correlation.
Interesting.
A good one to look at for this was when Brianne Beggs ran against, who was it? I think he ran for county prosecutor, and he spent $250,000.
Ew.
Yeah, an ungodly amount. And I think Larry Haskell spent maybe $20,000. Maybe 50, I don't remember, but like an ungodly amount. And all of that money went to Facebook and went to like all these social media things, and didn't spend any on radio. Right. And he just got trashed, and to me it was like, okay, like that says that all the money in the world, if you've got nothing to say, and we see this even in the last election, right? What's her name outspent Trump, and if you include Biden and what's her name, they outspent Trump like 3-1, right? Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, you can have all the money in the world and you can throw it in a hole. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win an election, right? But like I said, what I saw was that radio correlates really, really well to successful candidates. Now, the problem with that is that correlation gets weaker every year. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if it's still true in 2025, but it was true in 2022.
Well, Dallas Lowe, the owner of Golden Rule Break, we talked about this on the podcast and he said he's still a believer in radio.
I believe it because I hear his commercials.
Mm-hmm. Correct. And it's interesting because I was showing you the numbers for that group like 12,000
Yeah.
in 90 days. I'm looking at the Nielsen ratings.
Yeah.
And we're beating out like my smaller B-roll videos that are beating out views, just total engagement. So yeah, I get it. A listener is not the same as a viewer, but
right.
pound for pound, we're beating the smaller radio stations.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah, I mean, death to radio. Sorry for them, but
yeah.
Well, people are snobs. We're audio snobs now.
I think that's what it is. I think that, like it goes, I guess for me, my hypothesis would be that the person who is still listening to radio is a certain kind of person.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
You know what I mean? Like they're a voter. You know what I mean? Whether that's because they're old and they're still listening to radio because they can't download their podcasts or do it any other way, maybe, or because maybe they're a union worker and they've got radio playing in the background while they're doing stuff because that's the easiest way to deal with stuff. I mean, like whatever it is, that is a small but captive group of people who definitively vote.
Correct. And the ones out in the District 9, 7 are the first ones in.
Yeah.
They are so very high propensity voters.
Yeah.
So it seems like those are the first people to hit up before you work your way into the city.
Yep. Agreed. Especially if you're looking countywide or regionally. Yeah, mm-hmm. I agree. And that's a good strategic perspective too, right? Because going back to what we were talking about earlier, that if you have that engagement earlier, those people talk to other people, and it's you get those nodes.
Mm-hmm. Correct. And another interesting thing that I found in the data was back in 2021, they rezoned all the districts.
Yeah.
So I was doing this thing called K-means cluster analysis, where I'm looking at the number of Democrats versus Republicans in the district. And so basically it used to be a blowout, like 10,000. And now since they rezoned the districts, it made it a lot closer, closer to where the Democrats were winning in like 2023.
Yeah.
And so rezoning the districts, whenever people talk about that, you should
it's gerrymandering.
Slam on the brakes on that.
Yeah.
So we got 2 minutes left. So we're at 1:28.
Nice.
I know. Time flies when you talk about fun stuff.
Right.
So so first off, book recommendations.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what the name of this book is. I just finished reading it. It's a history of people, and I think it might be called Humans.
Okay.
It's pretty neat book. I don't know if I agree with all of the different hypotheses in there about the history of humans, but I thought it was an interesting book with an interesting perspective. So that's a good one, I would say, to plug. And then otherwise, I can't think of another good book right off the top of my head, but that's a good one. Yeah,
that's fine. And then last but not least, where can people find you?
Yeah, well, I mean, you can obviously find me at the city on Tuesday nights, and I encourage, especially if you're a Spokane Valley resident, I encourage you to come down to the city council meetings and see what's going on at your city council, because right now your taxes are going up, your police services are undermanned, and we're wasting a lot of money on silly road projects that don't need to be wasted on. So I really encourage all you residents to get involved there. So you'll see me there at city council. Obviously, you see me at Dees Dog Grooming over there on Sprague and in between McDonald and Evergreen. We've got big pink signs. They're huge. You'll see them from a mile away. Feel free to come on in, especially if you've got a pup. Be happy to get you scheduled. Our north side location on Garland, which is located basically on Garland and Wall, pretty much right next to the bank. That's over there. Come check us out there. And then, of course, on my website, alforval.com, like Al for the Valley. Al for Val. That's
Al
me.
For Val. Well, there you have it, everybody. The Al American Merkel.
Thank you very much.
Heck yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I did. Be sure to check out his information in the links in the video description below. Be sure to like, subscribe, and smash that bell for more data-driven updates. Till next time, folks. Bye.
Bye-bye.